He liked to party, but I mean, he was too young to go. But I mean, he's sorely missed. But we've carried the baton for him, haven't we? So, the reason we started Midtope. So he first did it in New York, and it was really as a sort of an antidote to the American meat industry, which is quite harsh. They grow sort of things for yield and size, and they grain feed things, and they grow things in cages and boxes, and God knows, probably in tubes and envelopes. Who knows? But he was very much against that. I'd seen him doing this thing over there. Phoned him up one day, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll jump on a plane. Let's do it." And he came over with a couple of Pat LaFrida ribeyes in his suitcase. He's like, "Here, I got these for you. Been in my suitcase for 7 hours, but should be." I don't know why he sounds like Mickey Mouse, but he didn't sound like Mickey Mouse. I think my Josh accent changes every year, but. Yeah, but so yeah, he came over and and we 2013 we did the first one, and we were just talking, weren't we, about who we had on. Like Aaron Franklin was there that year. We've had Francis Malman, Lennox Hasty, uh, Peter Hannon. He did. He did. Yeah, yeah. We've had Dave Carter, who was a man who just learnt how to do smoking meat, hadn't he? And he's like a legend of, sort of smokestack, Manteca, and I believe a new restaurant that's coming soon, which I can't mention. Yeah. But the point is that so what we're all about, the reason that I'm standing there even telling you about it, because it's a lot of food shows, it's just like, here's the food, come and eat it. But our whole point is about everything is chosen, so we go out and we choose all these wonderful chefs. There's 100 chefs this year, so I'm not going to bother mentioning anyone. Anyone might mention Tuffy Stone, because just he's down the end and he's really, the professor. Unbelievable. Yep. And a bloody lovely man. But apart from that, I shouldn't really mention anyone else. Apart from James George, who's standing over there and who's one of my partners. I might mention him. And obviously the great Christian Stevenson. But I'm not going to mention anyone else, apart from Josh Ozersky. So yeah, we stuck to the principles. We invite all the chefs. We curate the menu. None of it's an accident. We spend months doing it. We insist on ethically produced meat. We insist on ethically produced charcoal. So Whitland Flame are doing our charcoal this year. It's all from in the UK. It's all sustainably sourced. And we choose our partners who are very kind to us very, very, very carefully. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to bore you any longer. I've done my piece. I'm going to raise a glass to Josh Ozersky, who started this whole thing. And I'm going to wish you a happy Meatopia, and thanks for coming to my 10th birthday party, kids. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks, Matt. Christian, the real guy.
No, you're the real guy. As Josh Ozersky once said, I like my food to have parents. And that's what we're here to celebrate. And
will vegetarians stop eating my food's food?
That's it, man. Stop eating my food's food. I'm Christian Stevenson. I'll be your host throughout the afternoon. We've got a vast array of phenomenal chefs, artisans, and just good people throughout the day. Top of the hour, every hour. Apart from this one right here, it's 12:30. So we're gonna welcome onto the stage. Do I have to tell the guy, because we're live broadcasting all this on streams? If you want to make your friends jealous, tell them to go to the Meatopia website. Are we live now? Okay, that was a long preamble. I'm letting you know that we can start streaming now. All right, we are live. So yeah, make your friends jealous. Tell them to go on to Meatopia, and then you can wave at the camera here and there. But please welcome to the stage, fifth generation Cooper, Ger Buckley from Jameson's.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. As I say, I'm fifth generation Cooper, so my family have been working coopering, which is the craft of making these barrels, for over 200 years. And like 200 years here in London, everything had to go in a barrel. If it was being shipped anywhere, it went in a barrel, whether it was brandy or it was whiskey or it was apples or jam or anything like that. So, and the craft that I do is unchanged, literally in 4,500 years. Because a barrel is round and a cylinder, there's no improving on a circle. So I just repair casks now, repair barrels, and I do it exactly the same way that Roman coopers would have done it here 2,000 years ago. There's absolutely no difference. So the first guys who invented a cask in Egypt 4,500 years ago, the idea was, if you had a hollowed out log as a vessel, well, how do I make more of those? So if I get individual pieces called staves, and I calculate the angle through trial and error, but how do I hold the whole thing together? So by having it sloped and that I push down a hoop, I can bind the whole thing. And the third challenge was, how do I fit a lid that it's not going to leak? So by cutting a groove at the top of the barrel here, chamfering the lid, compassing it 6 times around, and that will give you the circumference of your lid. And that's his 3 problems, and I've done anything different since. And in fact, talking about a compass, my grandfather's brother was a ship's cooper in the British Navy in 1880, and I have his tools, and one of his compasses that's 140 years old now, I still use. And that's the only measuring tool. So everything in making this barrel is by hand, traditionally, using things like an axe, an adze, various tools like that. I am doing a demonstration later downstairs as well, where I dismantle this barrel and rebuild it and show you how all that's done. But for today, we're talking about charring the barrel, okay? And that's really important, because if you just make this barrel and you don't toast it or char it, you couldn't drink the wine, you couldn't drink the whiskey. It would be really sour, really bitter. And we're handing out some Jameson Black Barrel there now for everybody, and I'm going to talk about that.
Oh, are we allowed to give him a little look? I know these things are really heavy. Can I bend it over and...
A little bit. I'm not sure if you can see the char,
You can see the char in here.
because we did char this barrel as well yesterday. So what's really important is when you make a barrel for the first time, these staves are dead straight, so they're not bent. You don't do it in one go, bend them one by one. You build a fire inside when you just build your barrel, heat up the wood, and now you can bend it. Now it's workable. So I put a cable around the bottom of the barrel, wind in the cable, pull in my cask, and now I've got my shape. That's called toasting. That's as far as they'll go in the wine business. Because in the wine business, you don't want to over oak your wine too much. But in the whiskey business, we want as much oak and as quickly as we can get it. And what they discovered in America about 200 years ago is barrels they had completely charred on the inside, like this, that the whiskey tasted better and it matured quicker. Now, they didn't understand it at the time, but essentially what we're doing is both toasting and charring the wood, we're cooking it. Going forward with the charring, we're caramelizing and crystallizing all the sugars, vanillas, caramels in the oak, opening up the pores of the wood. The whiskey can penetrate easier and extract all those ingredients. So, have you had questions, Arza?
Yeah. How do you char it evenly so you don't burn too much in one area?
Because of the circle of the barrel, it will all evenly go up. The whole barrel itself will catch on fire. Nowadays, they're doing it by gas in the US. So it goes at 700 degrees for about 20 seconds for a light char, maybe 40, 50 seconds for a very severe char. In the wine business, they never use gas. It's always just direct fire, usually from the shavings that you have from making the barrel, okay? Because they're very traditional in the wine business. They don't want anything to interfere with that wine, especially if you're paying a couple of £100 for a bottle of wine. So what the Americans discovered with the charring is that all that crystallization of the vanillas and caramels, and on the older whiskies, say a Jameson 18 or 21-year-old or something like that, 60 to 70% of the taste is from the wood. You're drinking oak, okay? And what we do with Jameson Black Barrel is we remove the lids in the US and we do it for a second time. So they would have been filled first, maybe with bourbon or something. We remove the lids, we set fire to it again, which is what I'm going to demonstrate today, because we want a much deeper cooking of the oak to get much more sweetness and vanilla in this whiskey. And this whiskey, just to describe it, even on the nose, you get that sweet vanilla, almost chocolate flavors coming through.
Did you guys already smash them already? Yeah, sorry. we should have said something.
I'm a bit slow. And I know what you're all thinking. You want a refill, don't you? Anyway, but you do get, even without water or anything at the strength of it, it's very mellow, very mild, very sweet. A lot of vanilla, charred wood, chocolate flavors. Now, that's only a guide. Whatever you smell or taste yourself is totally up to yourself, and it depends on what you're eating today will influence how things taste, okay? But anyway, that's Jameson Black Barrel. The other thing that's unique about that whiskey is the way it's distilled. Just to give a brief history of whiskey making, okay? So monks in Ireland, maybe 700 or 800 years ago, had seen the distilling process in the Middle East. where they distilled in a clay pot to make perfume. And they'd been doing that for thousands of years. And traditionally, monks would have, in the UK and in Ireland, would have made beer. It would have been a very weak beer, but it would have been beer. A lot safer to drink than even drinking water, as there was so many pollutants going on in rivers that time. And they said, what if we distill the beer, like they did in the Middle East, what we get? And we get what we called back then, Ishkabaha. And that's the Gaelic. Now, English, you people couldn't pronounce Ishkabaha, so you abbreviated it to call it whiskey. So she gave the name to whiskey when you arrived in Ireland. And we've been making it ever since. So what we do first thing every morning is we make a distiller's beer, put into the still, heat it up, evaporate off the vapors. Alcohol evaporates faster than water. And we do the exact same thing. So every distillery in the world has to make a distiller's beer first thing in the morning. And that's what we're making from. Whether you're in Kentucky or you're in Scotland, it doesn't matter where you are. So the other thing that's unique to Ireland, we use very big, huge pot stills. Like they're as this big, and we have 10 of those. And so it's a really flavoursome whiskey. So in this whiskey, we use both a column still, which is a big, huge pipe that has hot plates on the way down, pouring your beer on top, it works its way down, evaporates off, and it's a continuous still. And the other one is the big, huge copper pots with the big, huge necks that you might see in lots of advertising and stuff like that. The ones we have in Midleton are the biggest in the world in use. Okay? So this whiskey is the only whiskey I know of that uses both distillation methods in the making. First in the column, and then the next two in the pot. And then the other thing that's unique about this whiskey, we don't do for any other one, is we double flame or char the barrel. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set fire to it, and we leave it catch on.
All right.
And if you have any questions, the other thing that down here, down by Tobacco Dock and all that area, there'd have been hundreds, if not thousands, of coopers working here, because everything in the British Empire had to be exported or imported in barrels. And as I was saying, my grandfather, who worked in the British Navy, he would have been very responsible for ensuring the water barrels never emptied, and especially the rum barrels, I suppose.
You've got a lot of newspaper and wood in here.
So what
This
I have
looks
is,
illegal right now.
What I have is kindling, so I've cheated a bit. Normally I would use the shavings from making the barrel, but because we're over here, I just made kindling, okay? And it's going to catch there now, and I'm going to go upwind.
Me too.
So the other thing that's important about burning or toasting or charring a barrel is we spend a lot of time seasoning the wood to try and remove some tannin, okay? And tannin is what the tree produces when it comes under insect attack. It sends out a tannin to the leaves that's sour and bitter, and then the insects die. We remove a lot of tannin in the seasoning, but when we char a barrel, well, we're removing a good bit of tannin. And as we go along, when I out it in a minute, we'll see a big puff of smoke, and it's kind of a yellow smoke, and that's full of tannin. And what's happening now is the barrel is sucking oxygen, running out of it, and then going down and coming up, so it's bellying up and down. And I'm not going to leave it go too long. If I was doing this traditionally this way, I might go 4 or 5 minutes to set fire to the whole barrel. So I'm just going to give you a sample of what it's like. But it's really important, as I say, and distillers might say, I want a light char or medium char, severe char, depending on what influence they want in their whiskey, and the same in the wine business. And a light toast or a medium toast, okay? But you must cook the barrel. You must set fire to it. If you don't, you'll have all those tannins that will ruin your whiskey or your wine, okay? And so the sad thing for me being a cooper here is where there was thousands of coopers here one time, there's virtually no, I don't know if there's any cooper left in England, considering how important it was to the British Empire and to trade and everything else. So it's nice for me to come back to where it really was important. And this is where coopering came from to Ireland, is from London. And all my tools are from Sheffield. So we had a big link. The other thing is all of my tools would have animal names, like a dog, a swift, a horse. They're the exact same names here in London as well, when the coopers were here. So we took all that influence from here. And even the crest of our guild is a copy of the Cooper's Guild here in London from Cooper's House, if any of you have ever come across that.
Are you finding any young people taking up coopering?
So I just trained up a guy who just qualified this year, and actually for his trade exam, he had to make this piece on the end to replace it. That was part of his exam, so this is the barrel he had to work on. And it's very traditional. And the thing to remember as well is, like even doing that, it's exactly the same as the guy did here 2,000 years ago. Because the barrel is round and it's a cylinder, there's no improvement on that. So for me, as a craftsperson or whatever, there's no one coming in to retrain me. There's no new software. And like a lot of people say, they take up a hobby, woodworking or whatever. I do my hobby every day. And it's the most relaxing thing to go to work to relax. Get away from home, I go to work to relax. So the barrel is starting to go on fire now. So I'm just going to out it. Just by putting the lid on and smothering it. You can almost see the yellow. I'm going to lift this now in a second. You'll see a big puff of smoke. You can almost see it's not white smoke, it's the yellow smoke. That's the tannin. I hope nobody gets smoked. But especially, you could almost say I'm barbecuing my barrel. So it's all right. And you can see all that smoke come up. And I'm going to put it on for the final time this time. And leave it go out. I do have some water, just in case it ignites again. But I know it looks quite simple, but that's actually really important. And what you would do to ensure, if you were doing a heavy toast, I'd be watching the char inside the barrel. And on a heavy char, what they call it in Kentucky, they call it an alligator char. It looks like alligator pattern on the staves on the inside, okay? As they say, you see the wine barrels are just a light color yellow, light toast. Well, all whiskey barrels, American barrels are all thing. The other thing is, this is American white oak. The other main wood we use is European white oak from usually sherry casks from Jerez. American white oak is very sweet, a lot of flavor, a lot of vanilla, a lot of caramel. The European casks, which is called a butt, and for everybody in America, that means a wholly different thing, but so it's a large cask which is solid, like the butt of a tree, the buttress on a church, and that cask is 500 litre cask, and it's exactly the same size and dimensions that were used here in London 2,000 years ago, because they dug them up from bogs and from wells and stuff. Another story I've been telling as well is in that show you have on BBC, Dig for Britain or whatever. One of the digs here in London discovered tablets with the description to the cooper of what barrels they wanted to make, and there was 1,000 tablets describing, I want a hogshead, I want a butt, I want a firkin, I want all that made. So it's great for me to be back here where it really started for our family back in Ireland. So, and if you have any questions, sorry, I'll just take this something in.
With the tannin coming out with the yellow smoke, would you wait till it goes whiter until you know it's...
No, it'll never go white.
It'll never just stay
Yeah.
yellow?
What I'm watching for is how far the burn into the wood is, rather than the smoke. So I'm not really smoking the barrel, I'm just going to char it. And this gentleman at the back.
You're not making barrels now. How are barrels made?
So these now are very machine made in the US. And most of the cooperages in the US, it's technicians putting together and all that. If they break, they go to the cooper shop and the cooper repairs it. In the wine business, it's all Cooper still making these. And depending on the quality of the wine cask, like I was in a cooperage in Bordeaux just late last year, and for the finest wine casks, it's one cooper in his own shop making that wine cask that probably costs a couple of £1,000 just for that cask. But it's a really specialised oak. It's probably seasoned for 7 or 8 years, and it's the highest quality. And the same cooperage, on the day we were there, we're making casks for the Rothschilds. So that'll tell you the kind of, and you could eat off the floor. We're so clean and everything. It is needed unless AI or something takes over. But what they do in the wine business in the New World is they put in wood chips and stuff. That's not allowed in Ireland anyway. I'm not sure if it's allowed in America. It's not allowed in Scotland either. You can't put wood chips in to flavour the whiskey. It must be the barrel. For example, you can't have a 1,000 litre barrel. That's not a barrel anymore. That's a vat. There's a certain limit on size you can go to. I think it's 650 litres is the max. You can go to still call it a barrel. Okay.
Is there any difference in rum
No, the rum business. So we fill these barrels 3 times. That could be from 9, 12 years up to maybe 30 years, depending on how old we want the whiskey to be. We then sell these barrels to a sister company in Cuba called Havana Club. And I did ask that question to their marketing director. I said, you know, they're very old barrels for us. Are they any use to you? He said, they're brand new barrels to us because the most valuable barrel in the rum business is the 80, 90-year-old barrel. Because what's happened is they filled it with rum. It builds up a layer on the inside that builds out over time. And when they add a new rum, it infuses the new rum. So this barrel can go literally for 100 years. And the trees are cut at about 80. So this barrel could still be in use in the rum business when the next tree is already up. So it's a very sustainable thing. If you get ones that have a lot of breaks, you end up as planters. People make loads of furniture. I've made furniture myself out of them. They go for all sorts of uses. Bartenders use staves to smoke their cocktails and all sorts of things. So it's just whole raft of things you can do with a barrel even when it's finished, you know?
So drinking is a sustainable business.
It is.
Well said. Drinking is a
It's-
sustainable business.
It's
Yay.
barley,
To drinking.
grain, malt, wood.
Cheers to that. Irish whiskey versus Scotch whiskey.
Is there any competition?
It's just a different set of rules, isn't there?
Well, we did teach the Scotch how to make whiskey. And that's proven. But, no, I mean, like, to be honest, if I'm in Kentucky, I'm going to drink bourbon. I'm going to taste that. English whiskies, if I can come across them, I'll drink them. I want to know what everyone else is doing as well. I'm not saying we've cornered the market or making good whiskey or anything like that. But we do have over 200 years of tradition and knowledge and experience being passed down through generations. So, how do you make it? What do I make of it?
How do you rate it?
I haven't tasted it. I haven't tasted it. It's good, yeah.
Genevieve said it's really good. There you go.
Now, the one thing, just to include all distilleries, is that people are making whiskey better now than ever in the past, right? Because the controls are so good in the quality of the barley and the grain and everything else. The oak cask, the distilling, the warehousing, everything is, in my lifetime, has greatly improved. So there's always a fallacy thing, oh, the whiskey in the mid-turn century was way better. It'll blow the head off you. So, like, even drinking Jameson Black Barrel down, it's very drinkable. You know, when I started, whiskey was really strong. You had a lot of water and stuff like that. So, I would have to say, most distilleries anyway that I know of are making whiskey better than we have in the past.
How would they save a barrel? Like you were saying before we came on stage that, back in the old days, 100, 200 years ago, some of the barrels would go off, leakage or the way they were stored. How would you save the liquor?
So what would happen is if you left this barrel outside and it gets rain, like the next week you're going to get a heat wave. So if you leave this barrel outside, all the top is going to open up. Then you get a shower of rain. Rain goes in, it stays in, water stays in it for maybe a couple of weeks or whatever. It gets contaminated. So the original way we used to get rid of that, and when I started first, is we'd light a fire inside the barrel to burn the bad smell out of the barrel. And the term was to make it sweet smelling again. And I think that's one of the ways that the Americans came up with charring. Get rid of bad smells out of barrels that went up the Ohio or the Mississippi, come back a couple of months later really smelling badly. Let's set fire to it again and get rid of that bad smell. And that's how we revive the barrel. We don't do something in Ireland, which some distilleries do. We don't shave the inside the barrel and go again. We don't do that. We buy in new barrels all the time. We'll buy in about 300,000 American barrels this year alone. The other thing, just on another piece of info, is that we lose 2% out through the barrel per annum, what we call angel share. And the barrel does interact with its environment, okay? And because we have 2 million barrels in Midleton, losing 2%, we lose 90,000 bottles a day to the angels. And it's the same in Scotland. In Kentucky and in Tennessee, it's 7 or 8% loss per annum, on average. So they're 3 times losses, because their summers are so hot and so good. Whereas, as you know, in Scotland and Ireland, you wouldn't get a day like this.
And
it's rained non-stop for July and August. So.
And there's more barrels of brown water in the state of Kentucky than there are people in the state.
Well, there was a figure, I remember back in the 80s, as the whiskey business declined that time, and it was a Time magazine cover, and it said there was 2.5 bottles of whiskey for every man, woman and child on earth in Scotland. They're completely overproduced, and some of the older whiskeys. So, is there any other questions before I leave you? Go enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for watching.
A big round of applause for Ger Buckley. I love learning. I love drinking. That was awesome, sir.
I'll just give you a toast before I go. I wouldn't be an Irishman if I didn't give you a toast. May the roof above us never fall in, and we friends beneath never fall out. Sláinte.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
our next guest is probably one of the smartest people on the planet, easily the most interesting people on the planet. His name is Matt Williams. He lives amongst the trees. He talks to the trees, and he distills wood to make Woodland Flame charcoal, arguably the best charcoal on the planet. And he'll be up on stage with myself to say how we can save the planet through charcoal, and also wage war against France, which is one of his other things. We might go there, we might not. And we're going to have Genevieve Taylor come up and help us do some cooking, one of the top chefs in Europe, on the planet. And that'll be at the top of the 1 o'clock hour, which is in 10 minutes. So get some food, get some drinks, and we'll be back here in 10 minutes with Matt Williams and Genevieve Taylor.